Well, it's nice to see you again, and if you're like me, you're beginning to lose track of time. That's why we, at this stage, very early in this process, point out that it is April the 9th.
Correct.
And a Thursday. And we apologise, obviously, for the essential work that is going on behind us. There's construction taking place beneath the balcony here. I hope it's not too distracting during the course of this programme. Newspaper cuttings, Andy, very briefly, coming out of Italy. A story that Cristiano Ronaldo could make a sensational return to Real Madrid for a cut price 50 million, with Juve toiling financially.
So they might cash in their best player.
You wouldn't believe this, but I will explain more tomorrow. A beIN Sports exclusive, another one, match fixing. Terrific story here, and a ghost tournament that's allegedly been taking place during the COVID-19 crisis. I mean, you wouldn't believe it, would you?
Yes, I would.
Another story.
Do you know there was a game played in, I think it was in Scandinavia or somewhere, like an amateur game played between a friendly game, and somebody got hold of it online, Richard, and the whole thing went absolutely viral, and they had to abandon the game because the betting that was taking place on that one game.
That's right. Another story coming out of Italy. Serie A chief Pierpaolo Marino, who is a director at Udinese, saying the Premier League are all but about to make an announcement that this season is the lost season.
Premier League or La Liga?
Premier League. And the reason Premier League, and the reason that his information he claims is good is because his club is owned by the Pozzos, who also own Watford.
Yes.
So there is the link.
That's a big shout.
But it's nothing more than his speculation. If we get playing again quickly, there's a new app which apparently could speed up the return of football. If you are deemed to be clear of coronavirus, you can buy a ticket and attend a football match. I report only what I'm reading in front of me. I really don't see how that works. But
no.
Premier League stars consulting lawyers now in the wage round. We shall discuss this further in just a moment with the man to talk to, as Jordan Henderson and the rest of the Premier League captains launch hashtag players together to make contributions directly to the NHS, which is something you said would happen.
Yeah.
Has football's credit crunch finally arrived? Experts are warning that the Premier League sides could go bust, owing 1.6 billion transfer fees, instalments on transfer fees due during June and July. Good news, Greaves is sitting up in hospital, we're told. There are concerns about the Euros, if we get round, and when ultimately we do. Some of the major cities that were due to host games are having doubts about it. In Scotland, Andy, news that everything below the Premiership has been scrapped, and the FA have voted to end all football outside of the 4 professional leagues. The Championship being one of the leagues that's under most pressure, apparently. Sadio Mane, title from the Mirror here, Mane, a tear has to fall. Very clever, boys. Sadio says he'll be gutted if the Reds don't win the title, but it's been tougher for so many millions around the world, and we'll win it next year. I like that.
I like that. Yeah.
I like that. And finally, more that we can discuss tomorrow, new rules and regulations for the new season whenever it starts. They've decided now, the officials, that this is not handball, and that is.
Good luck on gauging that
and a final
one.
bit of transfer speculation out of Germany. Lothar Matthäus is saying that Manuel Neuer will leave the club, and his likely destination is Chelsea.
Okay, wow. Wow.
Very special guest this morning is the Chief Exec of the Professional Footballers Association, Gordon Taylor. Gordon, how are you?
Morning, Gordon.
Good morning, Richard and Andy. I'm fine, thanks. I'm hoping and praying that this pandemic soon subsides. It was encouraging to see the German players talking about returning to training. I just feel a bit like, we have to give people some hope, because it's not just economically disastrous that people, have to be locked away in their homes. It's mentally not good either. So we've got to be resilient and we've got to be hopeful. And that's why from the very beginning, when we said to the Premier League football authorities, the players were getting very concerned about training, caring about their wives and families, and the season was suspended. But of course, it's not been suspended even as long as the normal summer break. And from that point of view, we were determined to get through March. There was cries of doom and gloom. But then again, you will know that when you have in a normal season situations like happened at Bury and at Bolton Wanderers, were happening at Oldham, at Macclesfield, over the past 4 decades, we've had some 70% of our clubs who've needed help facing administration, and we've always come out of that. We have a football creditors rule, which at least if the club stays in existence and is reformed, the players' wages are protected. And that's why in this particular situation, when we've had other problems, of course, you remember ITV Digital, etc., the game became very dependent, of course. That's why the Premier League was formed, really, because of satellite television and the vast amounts of money, and they have become dependent on it to the extent that it is their major source of income. But we wanted to talk about completing the season, that we've had other crises. We've had the problems, terrible tragedies of the 80s. We've even, managed to get football through 2 world wars. We initially in the 14-18 war, they were told to carry on playing. The king said to keep normality. And then the players wanted to play the part. They were told they'd be home by Christmas. And of course, that was far from the truth. And having survived that, I just felt it was the least we could do is hang on to the idea that we can get through the season. It completes the integrity, and we've got to be flexible. And in being flexible, that needs the flexibility of the broadcasting companies as well, because we're all in this together. We are determined in what we do, of course, by the pandemic, by the health of the nation, and by the ability of the NHS to cope. But then all the players have got their own family, their friends. You will know, Andy, the amount of community work that football does. That's why there's a concern about the non-playing staff at the club, about the community program keeping going, the youth academies. And so they are prepared to say, look, we'll play our part, not just in contributing, but initially they were quite concerned they were being put into a corner to take cuts, when we've always worked on a type of a deferral, wage deferrals, and then, because it's a cash flow problem, let's see what happens. Let's see if we can get playing behind closed doors, which will affect gate receipts, so they'll take that into consideration. Let's even wait to see if we can keep the season going, but if it is cancelled, then of course they know the amount of money that's lost to clubs, and they know their employers can't pay money that they've not got, but to look at it at that time rather than to be discounting everything now. We feel there's always a desire to have a rule for each division. Of course, you've got the Premier League and the 3 divisions of the Football League. Within the Premier League, there's a big gap in income and expenditure, as you'll know. And within the Football League, of course, there's the Championship clubs who get 80% of the revenue. Division 1 gets 12%, Division 2 gets 8%. And within those leagues, there's again a big difference. So we feel, with guidance from the Premier League, the Football League and ourselves, this is a local issue that players and clubs get round the table. Players aren't dictated to. They're fully presented with the picture, the data, the finances. And keeping that objective in mind, let's try and make sure we get through the season and then take each month as it comes. We got through March with help from the Premier League, with help from government with the furlough, and at the moment, I'm hoping we can get through April. But if it comes to the end of June, which is looking highly unlikely to close off the season, we need the same flexibility with regard to players' contracts.
Gordon, you may be one of the few that haven't seen previous Keys and Gray Unplugged in this series. So let me be consistent and be honest about my view on players' wages. Most people in society can't grasp the sort of money these boys earn. That's one thing. For me, totally separate to the issue of forcing the lads into taking a pay cut because of the envy of the figures. What if there is a motivation beyond that being the case? Do you believe the desire for a cut is from the majority? It would seem the majority of the public.
Um, not sure about that in so much as the players, the Premier League players, we respond to what our players are saying. The Premier League players felt they were being put into a corner, particularly by government, and they saw the irony of the fact that even if they took a cut of a third of their wages based on deferrals and possible cuts, that would be money lost to the government, to the Treasury. Some 500 million would have a tax receipt of 200 million, and that would be counterproductive. They know the situation, and from that point of view, they feel a little bit concerned that there's a lot of other people in the world who do well. It's not exactly a situation in the world where everybody's paid the same amount. It's there's other big sports stars, there's self-employed people. I think people assume, I'm not certain they get the point, whereby footballers do pay as you earn. And from that point of view, you know, they have their own commitments and liabilities, but they are prepared to contribute and to be part of the whole ethos of a club, which is about working together. And that's why there was such a storm when it appeared that some of the non-playing staff were having their wages reduced when the players knew the club was capable of not doing that.
Yeah, absolutely, and you can understand why.
I was just thinking, Gordon, I get a little confused, and maybe it's because, as a layman, and there's a lot of people might be like me. I hear the players have obviously set up this charitable foundation, which is fantastic, raising lots of money. That they want to control where that money goes. I get that. I would be in that school myself. So where does their responsibility stop, right? They're trying to help with the NHS and with the people in their clubs who might be on furlough. Then we hear that clubs themselves might be in danger of folding. So then, do the players then contributing to this charitable foundation, trying to look after non-playing staff in their club, now they're being asked to take a 30% cut to save their club? Where does it stop? A player's responsibility stop, or doesn't it stop at all?
Players are responsible enough to know that if they we want them to be round the table with their clubs, with the managers, with the chief execs, with the director of finance, to be fully in the picture and to agree between them rather than be dictated to. And that's quite simple, because you know the number of players who have their own community foundations, the charity foundations, hundreds of millions. It's a unique situation in our game that we began the community program in the 80s, and it's quite unique in the world. I don't think there's another contract, Andy and Richard, that has 6 hours a week devoted to community activities, which our players are prepared to sign up to, and they're very proud of that. And the last thing they will do, even from my point of view, to make it clear, I work for the players, and their health and welfare is obviously the main responsibility of my job. But I'm not naive enough to think that if we don't have clubs, we can't have players. It's professional football. It's the biggest sporting entertainment in the world. We have the most full-time clubs in this country. We have the highest aggregate attendances. We have the highest number of full-time professional players, even stretching into the National League. So it's really important that we work on parallel lines. And it's not a case of you sort that lot out and we'll not bother, because they know if they've not got a club, then there's not going to be any wages for our players.
Gordon, example, I'm a footballer this morning, page 38, let's use the Daily Mirror, not so much the Mail. Page 38 in the Mirror, players are being asked to defer wages. Page 39, football's going bust. I have to say, that would concern me slightly. Does it your members?
We've seen it before, and no doubt we'll see it again. As I say, we do have a record number of full-time clubs. It is becoming more difficult, in spite of the fact clubs have never, before this epidemic, clubs have never had more money. It's about management of money. We were very sad to lose Bury, and it was a battle to keep Bolton going. And we have said to the league in their independent review, there's got to be a much tighter control, really, on income and expenditure and the management of clubs. Otherwise, we're painting a false picture. And when you get a situation like this, then the whole game can blow up like a balloon being pricked.
But I'm slightly concerned that my deferral might mean I never see my wages. Is that a possibility?
Well, by deferral, it means that they're helping clubs with the cash flow. But it also gives that element of hope that if things do improve, if we can get back playing again, if we can get back to normality, then the position is saved. The stock market crashes with every crisis in the world, and that affects people's pension schemes. But it doesn't mean that it stays like that and it's gone forever. Yeah, it's a situation of hope where it will be built up again. And it's not dissimilar to what we're talking about in football. Give people some hope that we can return to normality, and if we can't, then the situation will address itself.
Gordon, do you expect when we come out of this traumatic period in our lives, everybody's lives, do you expect that there will still be 91 fully operational professional teams in our 4 leagues?
Andy, that is the hope and that is the objective. And everybody's saying what will happen, what will happen. You can only have objectives and be determined as far as possible to achieve those. You can't guarantee anything in such a climate like this in the world, where every country is suffering and dealing with a virus that they've never known before. So it is not known, and we can't talk about what is known. All I can say is that players will play a part in trying to achieve that objective, and I can assure you of that the game stays in the same shape as when the pandemic arrived. That is our objective, and that's what we've got to do, our fullest efforts to make sure it happens.
We're all desperate to see live football again, Gordon, but will your members go back to work to play behind closed doors? What will their concerns be?
Members want the situation to improve for us, and they're guided by government, they're guided by medical experts, and if you hear the bulletins every day, there's an element of confusion with those as well. So it really is about staying as calm as possible. But I just feel that if we have to play behind closed doors, of course, you will know, Andy, and you know, Richard, with the atmosphere for television, it's like a practice game. It's probably the best of a bad job. Nobody wants that to happen, and that's not the ideal objective. But if it needs to happen that way, then we'll have to make sure that it's safe to do so. And but it will be far and away it'll be the second option, top option, of course. Play again as normal, with crowds, with the atmosphere. If we don't achieve that, you'll be able to come back to me and say, well, that didn't happen. Did your players play a part in looking to save the clubs? And I'm hoping I'll be able to say, yes, they have done.
I'm just wondering, Gordon, as you talk there, how long, though, can we go with this season? You're right, we all hope we can conclude this season. That's the wish of you, the players, the clubs, the fans, everybody who's concerned with football, the broadcasters. Everyone wants to see an end to this season. But how long can we keep pushing the dates back before we make a final decision? How long before we have to say, do you know what, guys, this season just isn't going to finish?
Sorry, Andy, I get that very much, and that's why I was very concerned when the season broke up in the middle of March. They were talking straight away about possible resumption, April, early April, end of April, and I just didn't want us to be a hostage to fortune, because it's always dangerous to set that and then it doesn't happen and it doesn't happen and it doesn't happen. I just feel the world's got to be in a situation where if we're not prepared to be resilient and flexible, this is the 19-19-20 season. As far as I'm concerned, I would say we've got the rest of 2020 to deliver the season.
Wow.
And think about think about the future when it comes. These are special, unique times, and I'm just asking and hoping that everybody concerned with the game, like everybody concerned with society, can have some hope for the future and be as flexible as it takes to achieve that, bearing in mind we need to overcome this virus.
Do you believe, Gordon, that that is achievable, or is it more likely that we have to reset the clock and start again? And would that not be a more sensible option, because that's something that everybody in Europe could join in with?
I feel, I've already explained my views, Richard. I think if we have a crisis, I remember, obviously, nothing like this, but in the 1963 season, when I was a young professional at Bolton Wanderers, I think Bolton travelled to play over at Sheffield about 15 times because the weather was so bad.
Yeah, I remember those days.
There are always challenges, and I'm just of the opinion that challenges are there to overcome. And what doesn't beat you makes you stronger, and that's just my view of the world. It may not be everybody's view, but that's my view.
Are you going to get a deal with the football clubs for your members? That's point A in this question. And B, is Matt Hancock, Health Secretary, an opportunist?
Well, I'll answer first of all, A. We're in the process of in touch with all our players. They're asking us for help, for guidance. They're all getting round the table with the owners, with the chief execs, with the manager, and they are looking to do their bit. I don't want clubs, and certain clubs, and of course not all, using this situation to take advantage of the players whose the average career is 8 years. We can lose 50 players a year with permanent injury. It's not as though football is a job for life. And if we can save their income, then we will do. If the situation does go worse, and I've talked about those options, then they will agree that they are a part of a solution to overcome that.
And do you want to take on B? Is Matt Hancock an opportunist?
I'll take on B, because I just found it quite extraordinary, really, that the government doesn't realise it should do, because of what the game puts back into the economy, the money that football spends on its community initiatives, the tax that football pays, and to just highlight footballers when there are many other sportsmen. There are bankers that caused the trouble when the economy collapsed in 2008. There are hedge funds. I could give you a long list of people who are in jobs for life, whose earnings are more, and footballers don't hold a gun to clubs' heads. They've reached the top of a mountain that has taken a long, long time, and they get what they deserve. Every labourer's worth is higher, as the Bible says. And from that point of view, they have their own rights, and many players have said, at this time, not only is it my family, it's my friends, it's people I know, it's local communities, and we're helping there. But football-wise, of course, it becomes between the players and the clubs. They're doing their bit for the NHS, which we are pleased to support. My mother was a nurse, so I know she would be pleased with that. But above all, it's their clubs, and the club is not just a matter of the owners and the players. We know the vast amount of jobs that are created, because football is a fabric in all our communities, and it's really important that we keep that fabric there, especially for the mental health and welfare and enjoyment of the nation.
Gordon, it's been a pleasure for us. Thank you. By the way, over your left shoulder, is that one of those black and white photographs from the campaign in '63?
Yes.
No, it's from the 70s. That's been burning.
Do you have any colour photographs?
Trevor Francis, the first £1 million player, and they said, "Oh, that's far too much to pay." And next minute, you see how it goes. They said that at the beginning of the last century, when the first £1,000 transfer fee, and said that was ridiculous. So we do move on, and we do cope, and I'm hoping that's exactly what we're going to do, and for football to set that example.
Gordon, I can vouch for the years you're talking about, because I think I played against you in the mid-70s when you were at the Blues. Yeah, I'm sure we did.
I know you can. And my friend was Kendall, and when he was managing Everton, I'd been to see Brian Clough. I'd had a full day over one of his lads, and he kept me waiting while the priests were in the ground, the TV were in the ground. I arrived at 9 o'clock, I left at 5 o'clock, and just as I'm leaving, he said, "You've been very patient today. I'm glad you got it sorted." It was about a particular player who'd been injured and I've been put back on squad monies. And he said, "Please take this home for your wife. She'll be like my wife." So he gave me a decanter. And it was a Notts Forest decanter. And I said, "Well, yeah, it's very kind of you, Brian. It's been a full day and I'm hoping to get home now." And he said, just a minute, son, before you go out the door, just a minute. What are you doing tomorrow?" I said, "Well, every Saturday I go and watch a game." He went, "Well, this deal's only done. My brother's going to watch us play at Everton, and my brother's going on his own, and you are going to keep him company." I went, "Well, I'm thinking of going to Everton." He went, "Well, you are now, otherwise the deal's off." So I did go to the game. Howard was under pressure, and you'll remember that game because they'd got you, and they'd just got Peter Reid was on the bench, and you won that game, and the corner turned. They'd been daubing Howard's garage with paint and everything. Yeah. That game turned the corner, and you went on to great things. So when you're asking me about adversity, that's what called coming out of adversity and achieving, and that's what you did at Everton, Andy, and that's what Howard did.
Yeah, he did.
Well,
he did go on.
In fact, Reedy's watching this series of programmes. I'm glad you mentioned he was on the bench that particular afternoon.
Yeah.
Gordon. Thanks for taking
Thank you, Gordon.
a lot of time to talk to us and making things a whole lot clearer for us. We do appreciate your time. Great to see you.
Thanks a lot. Good to see you too.
Gordon Taylor, Chief Exec of the PFA. And when you have time to speak to somebody in that way, it helps to clear the blurred lines that we're presented with and the sound bites that very often confuse.
Well, I hope so, Richard, because the players and Gordon have taken a kicking in the last couple of weeks. There's no doubt about that. There's been certain sections of the press seem hell-bent on criticising not just the players but Gordon time after time and not maybe looking at the bigger picture and what the players and Gordon are trying to achieve. And that's why I think it's really difficult for them, because they want to contribute to the NHS. They're not selfish, horrible people. The vast majority of footballers are caring, really caring people who come from working class families and know what it's like to have trouble and strife in their lives. And they want to help, but they also want to be in control of that. And that's what I was asking on, how can they can't keep helping, it can't be down to them. They can't suddenly produce all this money, 20 million I'm hearing quoted today for the NHS to help them, and then say, well, you also need to give us 30% of your top line salary because your club's going to fold. Okay then, so you can have that. And then you need to try and give us some more money to help the furloughed staff who we're going to have to not pay. So, yes, footballers want to help, Richard, but I think people like Wayne Rooney are right in questioning where it goes and just how much responsibility they can take on their own shoulders.
Time to go time. The construction work continues over our shoulders. We hope that tomorrow it will have been completed. One last question. Why is there traffic news on the radio in the UK at the moment?
The same reason, why is there a weather forecast?
Back tomorrow.